the homily. In the past 18 months that I've been here as pastor, I've been listening as people, either because I've asked them or because they figured I just needed to hear it, have let me know what their thoughts were about the church building, about various things. And I actually have been writing them all down. So even though I don't keep a pen and paper back there at the door, I guarantee you that if you talk to me, I'll either forget it because I have a very bad memory, or I'll write it down. And most of the time, I do manage to get it written down. And all of that is what I shared with Mr. Charles Franks, the architect that we're talking to about the church. Out of that, we began to do things. The corpus got moved, the paneling came off, and now I have conceptual drawings for you over here based on your comments of a desire for a beautiful place to pray. That's what the goal is, to create a beautiful place to pray. And so I really ask you to take some time, take a look at the drawings, give me your comments, their concepts. So details like colors and so forth are not there. You know, it's just concepts. Is that the direction we want to go in? Enough said. You know, last week Deacon Bill kind of gave an introduction to this homily when the gospel from last week was the first half of what we read today. Jesus is in his hometown. He goes to the synagogue. He reads the passage from Isaiah. And now we're at the community's reaction to him. Their reaction to what's going on. But I want to go back a little bit further. Let's save the gospel for a moment and go all the way back to our first reading. There is a line there in the book of the prophet Jeremiah that I love and that I think sets up this whole thing. The word of the Lord came to me, Jeremiah, saying, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I dedicated you a prophet to the nations. I appointed you. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." From all time, God knew this short, fat guy. And still, knowing the strengths and the shortcomings that I have, God chose to create me. And in another place, in the prophet Isaiah, it says, "Before I knit you in your mother's womb, I loved you, and so I created you." That is a profound statement. And when you sit and think and pray about that from the beginning of all time, our God has known us and loved us. I think a lot of people spend a huge amount of their time being very frustrated over the person that God created us to be. He could have made me taller. He could have made me better looking. He could have given me different parents. But he loved me as I am. And so he created me. What I do with that now is my job. But I think that's a wonderful thing to know, that each and every one of us is created in love and given a destiny. I created you and formed you to be a prophet to the nations. That's his words to Jeremiah. What are his words to us? I think that's really important, because the fact is, rejection's a part of life. You know, all of us spend a great deal of time being afraid of rejection, especially when we're teenagers. You know, dreading that Friday night when the phone doesn't ring. You know, and assuming that it doesn't ring because nobody wants us. You know, now that we have cell phones, it's so much easier. You know, but in the days when you had to wait for the phone to actually ring, it was a whole lot harder. You know, and then somebody else beat you to the phone. But the reading from Paul's letter to the Corinthians is, I think, for each and every one of us, a great examination of conscience. And you've heard this done before. I mean, if you've been to a wedding, this always comes up. Now, this reading is always used. It's frequently used also at funerals. But this reading comes up, and we all sit there and get a little teary-eyed and so forth. That's not what it's about. From the beginning of all time, our God has loved you. From the beginning of all time, our God has formed you. From the beginning of all time, our God has given you a mission. And that mission is quite simple. Love is patient, love is kind. You know the rest, but change the words. Roy is patient. Roy is kind. Roy is not jealous. Roy is not pompous. Roy is not inflated. Roy is not rude. It's a good examination of conscience for us to make every night. In this day, did I live this? In this day, did I accept the mission that was given to me, even if everybody around me rejected it? Did I accept the mission that was given to me from all time to embody the love that God has demonstrated for the world? Before I knit you in your mother's womb, I knew you and consecrated you a prophet to the nations. This is said not only of Jeremiah, but of each and every one of us. Our mission to be living witnesses of the incredible love of our God for all the world. Not just some of it, not just bits and pieces that we happen to like, but for all the world. And yes, there will be days when people will want to rise up and lead us out to the edge of town and throw us over the cliff. That goes with being a prophet. But to genuinely live that mission is to live that reading from Paul. It's a great examination of conscience. You know, we're coming into the Lenten season. What, 2 weeks away? And during the Lenten season, we talk about examining our lives and renewing our lives in preparation for Easter. What a great Lenten resolution to maybe type out or print out that portion of the reading and put it someplace. And each night before you go to bed, or each day when you have a few moments, to make that examination of conscience. I am not jealous. I am not. I am not rude. I do not seek my own interest. I am not quick-tempered. I do not brood over injury. I do not rejoice over wrongdoing, but rejoice with the truth. I bear all things. I believe all things. I hope all things. I endure all things. For love never fails. That is our baptismal call. That is the call that was given to us before time began. Before he knit us in our mother's womb, he loved us and called us to be a prophet to the nations.